I'm Karen. I'm an alcoholic. And it's through the grace of God and the power of Alcoholics Anonymous that I've been sober since May 30th, 1982, and that doesn't make me a miracle. It makes Alcoholics Anonymous a miracle. And if you're new in this room tonight, I want to welcome you to AA. I always call it God's Magnificent AA, the program that saved my life, and it's going to save yours too, if you want to take a few quick actions. And I suggest strongly that you get a sponsor tonight, that you get that book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and you get busy and do what everybody else is doing around here, and you're going to stay sober as I've stayed sober for 13 years, and people like me cannot stay sober, I can guarantee you. My home group is the Pacific Group in West Los Angeles, California, a group I'm very, very proud to be a member of. That's the Pacific Group. Just as I'm sure you're proud to be a member of yours, and I guess if you're not proud, you ought to get a job in it, you know. Nobody does that job better than I do, I got to tell you, and I'm truly grateful for that job. It's not something I have to do, it's something that I want to do, and it's an honor and a privilege to be able to do it there, I got to tell you. And you know, I want to thank Gloria and the committee for inviting me to come out and share my life with you tonight. This is an honor and a privilege. It's one that I do not take lightly, I'll guarantee you. You guys, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I really do. And I think that it shows. And I make an awful lot of mistakes, and I do an awful lot of things wrong. But I'll tell you one thing, that I love you. Make no mistake about that. I've been taught to do an awful lot of things before I ever opened my big mouth. And one thing is to talk to my sponsor. And Clancy's sitting in this room tonight. And if anybody in this room is wondering why I have a man for a sponsor and why I have Clancy for a sponsor, it's really quite simple. I did not get sober in California. I got sober in a place called Lincoln, Nebraska, which is just a goddamn terrible place to get sober, if you want to know the truth. And I wasn't doing well in Alcoholics Anonymous in Lincoln. I went through 19 sponsors at a rapid clip, and I'm certainly not proud of it as I stand here tonight. And you guys, thank God for the old-timers in AA, because somebody loved me enough to get me my current sponsor. And I got to tell you that my life has done nothing but totally, completely turn around as a result of it. And I absolutely adore the ground that man walks on. And I talked to him tonight, and he said, well, you know, what are you so scared about? It's only the single most important moment of your life, you know, or something like that. And, you know, I want to thank my sponsor tonight publicly, you guys. I really do. I want to thank him for the structure and the discipline and the love that he's put in my life. Nobody in this world loves that man more than I do, I got to tell you. And I absolutely adore the ground that he walks on, and I'm truly grateful for him tonight for my sobriety, I got to tell you. If it wasn't for him, I'd be dead. There is no doubt in my mind about that. And then I think I did without a doubt the most important thing I can ever do, and that's to say, God, please help me say what you want me to say to these people. God is very much a part of my life tonight, you guys. It did not used to be that way for me, I can guarantee you. I come from an alcoholic hell. I could not even describe it. It was so bad. And, you know, my life is real good today, and sometimes I forget how bad it was. And I can tell you the day I got sober, I weighed 95 pounds. I was the color squash. I now call it hepatitis. I had liver cirrhosis. I had ruptured esophageal varices. And if you don't know what that stuff is, you don't want to know this, because you die from that kind of stuff. And I was standing on Skid Row in Lincoln, Nebraska, sucking on a bottle of Mad Dog. And if you guys haven't drank Mad Dog, I need to tell you it's not one of your finer wines, I can tell you that. I'll guarantee you one thing, that crap has never seen a grape, make no mistake about that. And I literally could not believe what was going on in my life. I'd lost my children. I'd lost my husband twice, although I didn't really care about that, I want you to know. I'd lost my house. I'd lost my job. I destroyed every relationship I'd ever had with anybody, and I was clearly dying from alcoholism. And then I lost the one thing that brought me my knees in this disease. I lost my nursing license. And you guys, I love my profession, and that absolutely devastated me. It did not stop me from drinking, and there's a reason for that. And it's in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I have an obsession that somehow, someday, I will learn to control and enjoy my drinking. The persistent illusion is astonishing. Many of us pursued in the gates of insanity and death. And I'll guarantee you one thing. I was in the gates of insanity the day I got sober, and almost into my coffin. And I'm truly grateful to stand here 13 years sober tonight, because I really should be dead. And, you know, you guys, it didn't start out with me standing on Skid Row in Nebraska, I got to tell you. I come from a lovely, lovely home there in Lincoln, and I want you to know that. And my mother wanted you to know it, too, I'll guarantee you that. I had a beautiful, sophisticated, elegant mother that died a year ago in March. And you guys, I miss my mom very, very much. I had no idea how much I loved that woman. I mean, I knew how much I loved her, but I had no idea how much until she died. And, well, I'll tell you, you get one, and when they're gone, they're gone. And my sponsor made me make amends to her many, many years ago, and we had a beautiful relationship the last 10 years of her life. And I'm truly grateful for that as I stand here tonight, you know. And I miss her terribly, but whenever I go speak anywhere, I'd always call my mom up, because I love to hear what she would say to me. And I miss that about her more than anything. And she'd say, why do you have to get up there and tell those people all that stuff about you? They're not going to like you. And I'd always say, Mom, the rottener you are in Alcoholics Anonymous, the more people love you. And And she'd say, well, I don't understand that. And I'd say, well, you don't have to understand it. And she's saying, don't tell those people that you're afraid, because they don't like people that are afraid. And I'd always say, Mom, the more afraid you are in Alcoholics Anonymous, the more people love you. And one more time she'd say, I don't get it. And why would she get it, you guys? She wasn't an alcoholic. And then she'd always end up by saying to me, I'm going to tell you something, young lady. You come from good stock, and we don't air our dirty laundry in public. And I'd always say, Mom, it's not dirty anymore. And she didn't understand that either. But, you know. My mom loved you guys, let me tell you. She loved you dearly. And although my mom didn't really believe I was an alcoholic the day she died, if you want to know the truth, she thought I was having a few problems, and I sure as hell was, I can tell you that. But anyway, I come from an alcoholic home, and I don't think that's neither here nor there. I don't do well with people that stand at AA podiums and blame anybody for anything. And my father was an alcoholic, you guys, and I know that that's true because on his death certificate it says died from alcoholism. And I loved my father very, very much. My dad was a major in the Air Force, and you tell me how a major in the Air Force dies on Skid Row. I don't know that happened, and the fact that he was an alcoholic, and whether or not he ever found AA or not, I do not know. I just know that he certainly did not stay sober as a result of it. And you know, one more time tonight, this is a cunning, baffling, powerful disease that kills people. This is not a game I'm playing up here. This is serious business. I would give anything in the world if my father were alive tonight, because we would have one hell of a lot to talk about, I can tell you. I have a sister who was Miss Rah-Rah in high school and homecoming queen and cheerleader and all that kind of crap, and made straight A's and never cracked a book, and I made straight F's and never cracked a book, and that was the difference. My sister was a beautiful little girl. She's a gorgeous woman today. She looks nothing like I do, I got to tell you. And she was a model for many, many years for Neiman Marcus in Dallas, Texas, and retired here recently. Now she's teaching school in the West Indies. And I got to tell you guys, it is a direct result of Alcoholics Anonymous. I love my sister very, very much today. And I recently found out something about her. She's also very beautiful on the inside, too, and I never used to know that. I have a brother who's a pilot in the Navy in Spain, who got home from Operation Desert Storm not too long ago, who was in that first attack over there. And I am so grateful that war is over. You have no idea. Neither one of these people are alcoholic. I have another sister who's married to the public defender in Lincoln, Nebraska, who got me out of one hell of a bunch of trouble when I got sober, and I'm welcome in their homes today, and I never used to be. I come from basically a very boring family, if you guys want to know the truth. They're highly successful people, and they bore me to tears, if you want to know the truth. And I have a couple kids who are 34 and 35 years old, and I know I certainly don't old enough to have kids that age, but by God, I am. And this is where it really starts getting interesting for me. These kids are anything but boring, I got to tell you guys. As a matter of fact, they're a couple of jerks, if you want to know the truth. You know, I love my kids very, very much. Please don't get me wrong, but they are indeed a couple of jerks. And my oldest son's an alcoholic, and I know our book says you don't call the people that, but I'll call him that if I want to, because he is one. And I got picked up for his number 9th drunk driving charge last March, and one more time he's gotten out of it. It never ceases to amaze me, the crap that we get away with, and I know I'm the last person in the world that can help that kid. I can just be an example to him and keep my mouth shut, and that's what I try and do. I have another son who's not an alcoholic, and I certainly didn't think he had a problem with drugs until last April, and I was back in Lincoln and speaking at a convention I started there 10 years ago, me and a couple other people, and don't ever go home and tell your kids you're not coming, let me tell you. Always tell your kids so they'll be prepared to see Mother. And I walked into my oldest son's home at midnight on a Friday night, and my youngest son was there. His wife had kicked him out of the house and stuff, and I said, Jeff, what are you doing here at midnight with sunglasses on, you know? And for some reason, it was just perfect timing, you guys. I found this kid sobbing in my lap, absolutely sobbing. He'd been on crystal meth for about 6 months and was just a nightmare, let me tell you. And you know, thank God I had been taught what to do about that in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I talked to my sponsor later on about it, you know, and he said, back off, just back off of it. Just be an example to him. And I've been able to do that, you guys. And I'm happy to report that my son is 6 months sober in the program of Narcotics Anonymous in Lincoln, Nebraska. Yeah. And I thank them for that. I wish I could say the same about my older son, I got to tell you, but it's just not true. My youngest son is really goofy, you guys, if you want to know the truth and stuff. And he called me about 8 years ago in L.A., and he said, Mom, I'm getting married tomorrow. And I thought, getting married tomorrow? It was a surprise to me anybody would even have him, if you want to know the truth. And I said, Jeff, why do you call me the day before the wedding and expect me to be back in Nebraska? I said, the Pope's in Los Angeles. I doubt if I can get a flight out of here. And he said, Mom, I don't expect you to come. It's just going to be a tiny little wedding. Don't worry about coming. Well, you guys, you know, you don't tell people like me that stuff. I wanted to be there. And I talked to my sponsor about it. The planes were just jammed and stuff. And he said, well, what the hell are you going to do? Walk? If you can't go, you can't go. Now shut up about it. I don't want to hear another word about it. And I did. And I talked to my mom the day after the wedding. And I said, Mom, how'd the wedding go? And she said, it was very lovely, but who was that little girl with them? And I said, what little girl? And she said, well, apparently Jeff's got a 4-year-old daughter that you don't know anything about. And I suggest you call your son and talk to him about it. And I need to tell you guys that I was more than happy to do that. Make no mistake. mistake about that. And I called Nebraska and I said, Jeff, how'd the wedding go? And he said, it was very nice, Mom. And I said, who was that little girl with you guys? And he said, Mom, that's my daughter. And I said, why didn't you tell me that I had a grandbaby? I was so upset with him. Not because I had a grandbaby, because I didn't know about it. And he said, Mom, I was afraid you'd get drunk. And I thought, get drunk? I wouldn't have gotten drunk, but at least I don't think I would have. And I was on the first thing smoking out of Los Angeles, California, to get home and meet my little granddaughter. And I got to tell you guys that this child is the icing on the cake. She is the apple of my eye. Her name is Brandy, and doesn't that just figure? And she walked up to me at the airport and she said, are you my grandma? And I said, well, yes, I am. And she said, well, you're my favorite grandma. And see, that's what I want to hear. That's the stuff I strive for. And I said, Brandy, why do you say that? You don't even know me. And she said, because you wear ribbons in your hair, and grandmas don't wear ribbons in their hair. And I thought, well, that's about the stupidest thing I've ever heard, but I'll take whatever I can get here. And I flew her out to California several years ago to give me a cake at my number 7th AA birthday, and she flew out from Nebraska by herself, and I thought she'd be terrified to be on the airplane by herself, but I was wrong about that. She got off that plane like she owned it after sitting in the cockpit with the pilot the whole trip, and I knew I was going to be in bad trouble because this little girl never shuts her mouth for 2 minutes, you guys, and I'm not used to be around little kids, and they drive me crazy real quick. And I said, Brandy, do you ever be quiet? You're giving me a headache. And she said, Grandma, I have a lot to say, and if you don't like it, take some aspirin, is what she said to me. I think that we have a prospective member of AA on our hands there. I hope I'm wrong about that. I stood in Lincoln, Nebraska 4 years ago in January, and I took my second grandchild, a beautiful baby boy that was born to my son and his wife. And I got to tell you guys that tears of gratitude rolled down my cheeks because I should not have been standing there. And I stood in Lincoln, Nebraska 3 years ago in January. I looked at my third grandbaby, another beautiful baby boy that was born to my son and his wife, and one more time the tears were rolling. And I stood in Lincoln, Nebraska last January. I looked at my fourth grandchild, another beautiful baby boy that was born to the alcoholic son of mine and his wife, and one more time the tears were rolling. Things with my family are very, very good today. It is only a direct result of Alcoholics Anonymous, I can assure you, and it took a long time for it to happen. And I want to share something with you guys that's so special in my life I can't begin to tell you. I have a little 3-year-old grandson. His name is Ryan. And Ryan's a real smart little boy. He's probably the smartest little boy I've ever seen before in my life, but I'm not prejudiced or anything. And Ryan learned how to call Grandma long distance, and every Thursday morning he gets on his mom and dad's little chair in the kitchen and he calls me, and he thinks that they don't know what he's doing, but he calls me and he says, Grandma, I love you. This is Ryan. Goodbye. And I thank you for that. I thank you for that. And I know, I send $20 anonymously back to Lincoln every month. And finally my son told me, he said, Mom, we cannot have him doing that stuff. My God, you're encouraging him to do something that's dishonest here. And I thought, oh, well, big deal. But you know what? He's right. I know that he's right about that. And it's my selfish needs. I needed that. And I said, well, find him a little job around the house and maybe he can call Grandma. And he said, okay. So he cleans a bookcase every Thursday morning and he gets to call Grandma and talk to her for 5 minutes. And I will tell you guys that I race home for that phone call every single day of my life on Thursday morning. So I thank you also for that. Without you, that would not be going on in my life, I can tell you. You guys, when I was growing up, I was a disruptive jerk is what I was. Always in trouble, always getting kicked out of classrooms. I hated discipline. I was very, very rebellious. I literally hated people telling me what to do. And I like it even less today, if you want to know the truth. And, I never felt like I belonged anywhere. And I hear that a lot from AA podiums, and I'm right on with that 125%, I got to tell you. I really don't remember my first drink, you guys. But I can tell you that I hope to God I never forget my last one. And I hope it was my last one. But I remember what alcohol did for me from the very beginning. It made me feel like I belonged, and I could be anything I wanted to be. I could do anything I wanted to do. I drank at any given opportunity after that, and I was probably about 13 years old. I realize that I'm in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous tonight, and I honor your podium by identifying myself as an alcoholic. I used a lot of drugs too. I need to make that a small part of my story. My sponsor encourages me to do that. And, when I was growing up in Nebraska, there just wasn't a lot of drugs on the street. But I'll guarantee you I found every single one of those drugs. And, there was some marijuana and speed and stuff. And today, if you get caught for possession of marijuana, you get a ticket, big deal. When I was growing up, you went to prison is what happened to you. And that didn't scare me. Nothing scared me. Everything I wasn't supposed to be doing. And I'm one of these alcoholic females. And I hate to say this from an AA podium, but it's precisely the way that it was for me. And we're supposed to tell the truth up here. That if you pat me on the head, my pants fall off is what happens to me. And I got myself into a lot of trouble when I was growing up. I absolutely love men. I love everything about them. You name it about it, and I loved about them. They've been the downfall of my entire existence, and they remain the same today, I'm sorry to say. And I particularly like sick men, and there's a room full of them here tonight. I can just feel it, That's one thing I love about Southern California. It's got so many sick men, and I'm just entertained around the clock 24 hours a day. And I'm getting the age now, girls with silver-head endorsement starting to become very attractive to me, which opens up a whole new ball game, I got to tell you. Those young ones are nice girls, but sooner you got to talk to them, and they ain't got nothing to say I want to hear, I got to tell you. And I'm sure that I have nothing to say they want to hear either. I got to tell you guys a funny story. I love to tell this story. I was in Nashville, Tennessee about 2 years ago giving a talk, and one of the fine ladies of Nashville, Tennessee walked up to me afterwards, I want you to know, and she said to me, she said, "You're disgusting." And she wasn't kidding, you guys. She meant every word of it. And I said, "Lady, from where I come from, being disgusting is a step up, I got to tell you." And furthermore, if I wanted you to sponsor me, I'd flown to Nashville and asked you. You know, I hear some women get up to this podium, you guys, and I wonder if they ever drank. I really do. I wonder if they didn't do all their drinking in one room and somebody didn't shoot a trim through the keyhole with an eyedropper. You know, I was out there big time. I got myself into a lot of trouble. I've been taught to share that freely in Alcoholics Anonymous. And if I offend anybody in this room tonight, I would never offend anybody in the program that saved my life, I got to tell you. And besides that, my book tells me, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous tells me, and this is my favorite part of the book, it says, cling to the thought that in God's hands, your dark past will be the greatest possession that you have. Then it goes on to say, because you can literally divert death and misery for others. And I found that to be very, very true in my sobriety. And I don't want to hear about it afterwards if I offend anybody here tonight. But anyway, I got pregnant when I was 16 years old, and I had to get married. And as it must be, I married an alcoholic. Don't most alcoholic women? I go for colorful, exciting men that beat the hell of you, all kinds of stuff. And he wasn't even a man, you guys. He was only 17 years old, and I was 16. I couldn't cook, I couldn't clean, I couldn't take care of a baby, nor did I want to take care of a baby. And before we knew it, we had 2 babies to take care of. And I quick found out what caused all that, and I put a halt to it, I'll guarantee you that. And that caused me a lot of trouble throughout the years. And as it must be, I married an individual that refused to work, that drank on a daily basis, and used to come home and beat me up on a daily basis. And I had never seen a man hit a woman before in my life, you guys. I'll guarantee you one thing. If my father would have laid one hand on my mom, she'd have knocked him from here to the moon, I got to tell you. And I grew to hate this guy very, very much, and I'm not blaming him for my disease. It's just part of my story, and I need to share it. And somebody in that family had to get a job, and I hadn't even finished junior high yet, for Christ's sakes. And I found a job as a nurse's aide at a hospital there in Lincoln. And the magic was put in Karen's life. I literally fell in love with nursing. And I made a plan to myself. I would love to go to school, and I'd love to become a registered nurse. That's what I would love to do. You know, they say that alcoholics don't have willpower. And I'm here to tell you tonight from this podium that is a bunch of crap. I have more willpower than 20 elephants. When I want to do well, I'm going to do well. I don't have any willpower as far as my disease goes, but when I want to do something, I'm going to do it. And I went back. I finished junior high. I finished high school. I went to college full-time for 3 years, and I worked full-time for 3 years. And I'm talking about 18, 20 hours a day, you guys, and that is hard stuff to do. I did not drink, not use any drugs during this period of time, and at the age of 27 years old, I became a registered nurse. And if you think I'm proud to stand up here tonight and tell you that I got jerked in front of the State Board of Nursing in Nebraska, and they told me, you are a disgrace to your profession, you're a disgrace to nursing, you're a disgrace to medicine, and you are no longer working because we just jerked your nursing license. If you think I'm proud of that, you are sadly wrong. You guys, I love my profession, and I really, really mean that. And I would never do anything to jeopardize the people that I take care of, nor the people that I work with under ordinary circumstances. And what I had to tell you now is a story about how I threw it right down the toilet so I could drink. And that is total insanity. It's also called alcoholism. At the age of 27 years old, I divorced this man. And girls, I got to tell you that a whole new world opened up to me, and it's called men and alcohol. And I went absolutely hog wild is what I did. I was engaged 8 times during that divorce. I never did marry these people. 2 of them died from alcoholism, for Christ's sakes. I don't know anything about social drinking. I drank, I ran with alcoholics, and we do indeed die from this. And at the age of 27 years old, I went to work in an operating room there in Nebraska, and I had that job for 19 years. I love working in surgery. I love taking care of those patients. It's a colorful, exciting nursing position. I drank. I ran around with medical people mostly. They were colorful, intense people. They worked hard and they played hard. And I need to tell you that the incidence of alcoholism amongst my profession is tremendously high. And that'll do a lot for your security level if you're going to have surgery next week. But it has to be very, very true. And those people are so grateful that I'm sober that they can't see straight. And I'm talking about alcoholics is what I'm talking about. You know, in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says clearly that we're to tell in the general way what our drinking was like. And you're going to get the general idea real quick about what my drinking was like. You know, I can tell you about my drinking in about 5 seconds flat if you guys want to know the truth. About 25 years ago, I was at a little concert in upstate New York called Woodstock. And Woodstock's exactly what my drinking was like. That Woodstock they had last summer was a piece of crap compared to the one I went to, I got to tell you. And, I mean, the one I went to is a real happening, let me tell you guys. And I was up there with a medical team of people, and we were supposed to be up there working. I was the first alcoholic to sign up for this event from Nebraska. And they hired people from the Midwest because they thought we'd be more responsible. And we were a seedy lot, let me tell you guys. And I found 9 other alcoholics to join me. And we met about 80 residents from the East Coast. And there we were at Woodstock. And I don't remember working 1 second that whole entire week, if you want to know the truth. But I do remember standing in front of that stage the night that Richie Havens sang Freedom, and Joe Cocker and Country Joe and Santana, all those groups that I loved. I come from the roaring 60s, you guys, and I love rock and roll, let me tell you. And things have not... Things have not changed in my life one bit. I loved Elvis Presley, and Janis Joplin was my lady, let me tell you. Wouldn't Janis Joplin have been a fine member of Alcoholics Anonymous, you guys? Yeah. I'd have hung out with Janice, I'll tell you. I might have even let Janice sponsor me, Clancy. You know, who knows. But anyway, drinking for me at one time was a fun thing, you guys. It'd be a lie for me to stand for a night and say anything but that. But I cannot remember the fun. I have to remember the pain that it caused me. And it almost cost me my life. And, you know, I love the horse races, too. I love everything I'm not supposed to be doing. And I've been to the horse races in Omaha, Nebraska with a couple of nurses that I worked with. And the girls told me, they said, Karen, the horse race has been over with for 3 hours. We're all drunk. Let's go back to Lincoln. And I said, well, run along. I'd met 2 guys from Council Bluffs, Iowa, and these guys wanted to take me to a party, and by God, I was going. Like I said, you pat me on the head, and I'll follow you anywhere you want to go. And I really can't tell you much about this party, nor the guys that I was with. I just know that I woke up out of a blackout on Highway 2 by Palmyra, Nebraska, a little bitty town of about 200 people, and I found out something very interesting out about Palmyra, Nebraska, that they take a dim view of naked women walking on their highways. I found that out. And there I was at 2 o'clock in the morning walking stark naked down the highway in my high heels carrying my purse. And it was February in Nebraska. And it's a tad bit nippy out there in February in Nebraska to be doing that. And tonight I know a duck's feathers freeze, I can tell you that. Of all the luck, the first person I ran into was a highway patrolman. You know, in California, the cops don't travel by themselves. They do in Nebraska. They're a little bit smarter out here than they are there. And this guy stops his squad car, and he rolls down his window. He turns on his siren, and he looked at me, and he said, what are you doing? And I thought, well, that's about the stupidest thing I've ever heard anybody say. It's quite obvious what I was doing. And he said, lady, you get in this squad car, and you sit down, and don't you touch me. Well... one thing about a person like myself, every time I'm in trouble, I'll do one thing more to make it worse every single time. And I looked at this cop and I said, I'm not getting in your squad car because you might try and rape me. He said, lady, I wouldn't bet any money on it. You are absolutely disgusting is what you are. And I'm here to tell you guys that made me madder than anything that was going on to show you how sick I was. And he had to get a matron out from the Palmyra, Nebraska City Jail to come out there and get me. And that woman was not pleased, I will guarantee you. They were very busy night at that downtown jail, not have time for this foolishness. And I went downtown, booked in that cop's raincoat. You know how cops keep raincoats in the trunks of their car for these occasions. And I went downtown, booked for indecent exposure, for assault and battery, for kicking in his windshield, for hitting her, for hitting him, all the delightful antics that we pull as practicing alcoholics. And I will never forget how humiliating it was to be in that courtroom the very next morning when my brother-in-law, the public defender in Lincoln, Nebraska, who was working down that day, and I did not know he was there, came walking up to me, and he said, Karen, have you lost your marbles or what? Why would you do something like this? And you guys, I looked at my brother-in-law, and I was to say this to many, many people in my drinking career in many, many courtrooms. I said, oh, for Christ's sakes, Dennis, this could happen to anybody. You know, and that cost me about $3,000 to get out of that, and I just shirked it off like it was no big deal. If you're going to drink, these things are going to happen occasionally, so what? I will never forget. Boy, denial is the name of the game here, I got to tell you. I will never forget waking up in the very hospital I worked at in surgery, in their emergency room, one more time out of a blackout, one more time I've been to the horse races. You know, for a number of years I thought the horse races were my problem. It was not my drinking. I'm one of these alcoholic females with a big mouth when I drink, and I have a big mouth in sobriety, but I can tell you that pain as a teacher here, it's getting a lot better. And I just smarted out some guy at that horse race track, and he belted me right in the teeth is what he did. And a plastic surgeon was putting 18 stitches in my mouth. And I'll never forget what this doctor said to me, you guys, as long as I live, I'll never never forget this. He said, Karen, we love you so much. What is wrong with you? You know, you're such a good nurse and stuff. We think you're an alcoholic. Let's send you to a treatment center and get this drinking problem taken care of so you can get on with your life here. And you guys, I could not believe the audacity that man had that he would say that to me. And I said, just fix my lip and get out of my face. I'll drink if I want to drink. And that's exactly what I did. And the drunk driving charges and the bad checks, all the stuff that we do, my kids were in trouble. I never could marry these guys I was engaged to. They kept dying from alcoholism. And I thought to myself, I need to get married to my ex-husband again. That's what I need to do. The kids need their father. Besides, I need to get even with him for all the things that he's done to me. And those are not very good reasons to get married again, I got to tell you. And I'm certainly not proud of it as I stand here tonight. And, you know, if anybody in this room's thinking about getting married to the same person twice, don't do it. You're going to be sorry. The only way I can describe it is like taking a bite out of the same turd twice, if you will. And, see why they find me so disgusting in Tennessee? I guess I am disgusting, but I love that. But anyway. And I danced that man through 3 of the most miserable years of his life on the face of this earth. And I love to tell you guys this story I'm about ready to tell you. And my sponsor always tells me that is not funny, and you should not be telling that from AA podiums. And I always say, okay, Clancy, I won't tell it anymore. And he said, no, go ahead and tell it, let those people see how sick you really were, and apparently how sick you really still are. And I'm still sick, and I still think it's funny, and I'm telling the story. When I married him again, I told him, I said, if you ever hit me again, buddy, I'm going to kill you the next time you hit me. And he said, I'll never hit you again ever. And I said, you better see that you don't. And he lied is what he did. And he came home drunk one night, and I happened to be sober this night for some reason, and I'll never know why, because I usually wasn't. And girls, you know what guys do when they come home drunk. They want to take you to bed and stuff, and I was not buying it. If there's anything I can't stand, it's some drunk man mauling me when I'm sober. I will say that when the shoe's under the foot, though, it's fine with me. And that guy came home and indicated that to me, and I said, you get your hands off me and leave me alone. I wanted nothing to do with him, period. And he broke my arm is what he did. And I'm here to tell you guys that I was pissed, make no mistake. I'm still pissed about it if you want to know the truth. And I told him, I said, you go to sleep on that couch, and so help me God, when you wake up, you're going to wish you'd never been born. And he sat up for hours, you guys, with his eyes pried open. As it must be, he finally passed out. And I started drinking martinis, and this is a classic example of what alcohol did for me. Alcohol told me what to do. I didn't tell it what to do. And I had about 8-10 martinis, and I was feeling no pain, I got to tell you. And I was sitting there watching this guy. And I hate to tell you what this man was doing. I can't tell you the story unless I tell you what he was doing. He was laying on the couch playing with himself. And I thought, you disgusting man, you make me sick to my stomach. And the more I drank, the madder I got. And you guys, you know, I'm a nurse, and I'm very familiar with male anatomy. And I'd be very familiar with male anatomy if I wasn't a nurse, you know, but anyway. I thought to myself, what can I do to get even with this guy for all the things he's done to me? And this is one thing we should never do, is drink and think at the same time. I got to tell you guys. Johnny H's old sponsor, Norma, used to always say that we should never drink and think at the same time. And boy, is that true. And I came up with this brilliant idea in my drunken stupor. This is about 22 years ago, you guys, when super glue first came out. And Mrs. Bobbitt has nothing on me, I can assure you. I was a foreigner before she ever got started, and I knew that stuff worked very, very well because my kids were plastering the house that wasn't moving, and I got that super glue out, and I read the directions on that super glue, and like I said, I was drunk and I wasn't seeing very clearly, and what I thought those directions said were, if this hits human skin, you would off within 15 hours. Now, why would it say something stupid like that? What it said was, in fact, if this hits human skin, you would off within 5 minutes is what it said. And I went over this guy, and I poured super glue all over this guy's groin, and I mean everywhere. I get so excited when I tell this, I could just do it all over again. Anyway. Anyway, I woke up in the morning, you guys, to screams of horror like you cannot even believe it. You know, I did not mean to hurt this guy as bad as I did, and I swear to God that's true, but I'll tell you what happened to my ex-husband. This guy never had the advantage of being circumcised, and now he truly was, let me tell you. And a telephone by our bedroom there in Lincoln. He called the police, and the cops were out in front of our home with their sirens going. There was an ambulance out there. The neighbors were gawking out of their windows. And, one thing you guys got to keep in mind here, they did not see things like this happen in Lincoln, Nebraska. In California, it wouldn't surprise me one bit, but certainly not there. And the cops were laughing, which led me to believe the whole thing was funny. And they said, "Lady, are you crazy or what? Why would you do something like this?" And you guys, I looked at those cops and I said, "What makes you think that I did it anyway? I was only standing there with glue on my hands, for Christ's sake." They said, "You're under arrest for assault and battery." And I said, "You can't arrest wives in Nebraska for assault and battery against their husbands." I knew better than that. And 2 days later when I got to jail, I guess I didn't know better than that. They took that man to the very hospital that I worked at in surgery, and he had to have surgery. And one more time, the whole staff saw what Karen did. And they took me to jail, I might add, and it turned out to be a terrible, terrible thing. Those doctors there in Lincoln couldn't get that glue off, and they had to get 2 surgeons down from Creighton University Medical School in Omaha to get that glue off. And, there's a paper about that at Creighton, and if anybody in this room is thinking about going to medical school there, you can read about it if you want to. I'd always wanted a paper about it, but not like this, I got to tell you. And I was sitting in that jail thinking to myself, I am getting the hell out of this marriage. Because when this guy comes home from the hospital, he's going to glue something of mine shut, and he would have too, I got to tell you. And God only knows I couldn't have that happen. Do you see why I have Clancy for a sponsor, you guys? Do you understand? And, my sponsor, we have an amends step in this program, you guys, and my sponsor told me I was going to Sacramento and make amends to my ex-husband, and I tried, where he lives with his new wife and stuff, and I tried to tell Clancy, I'm not sorry that I did that. Therefore, I don't have to make the amends. He said, I don't give a damn whether you're sorry or not. Get in the airplane and get there and do what I'm asking you to do, and maybe one of these days you will be sorry. And I don't need to tell anybody in this room tonight that guy kind of backs up when he sees me, I got to tell you, but... we were able to sit down and talk and stuff, and I made my amends to that man. And I will tell you guys that I walked away from him. I was free of what I had done to him. I was free of being married to him twice. And I can tell you that the promises in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous started coming true in my life when I made those amends. So I know that this thing works. You just got to do it for it to work. And here I was getting myself into all kinds of trouble at work, oversleeping in the morning, calling in sick all the time, doing all this stuff that we do, the bad checks, the drunk driving charges, all this stuff. And the day came to me that the hospital told me, we have had all the crap we're going to take off of you. We cannot read about our nursing staff in the paper anymore. Gluing husbands, drunk driving charges, all the stuff that you're doing. Everything that you do in Nebraska is in the paper, I'm sorry to say. And they knew my game, let me tell you. And they said, you're either going to a treatment center, you no longer have this job. Well, you guys, you don't tell people like me that stuff. And I said, you and what Army's going to make me go to a treatment center? And I walked out of a job that I loved more than in the whole world, and I cannot say that enough tonight. And I drank and I drank and I died 1,000 times over. I went to work at a nursing home there in Lincoln. What I'm about ready to tell you guys is something I'm not proud to discuss from any podium. It took me years in my sobriety before I would ever mention this. I found myself stealing drugs from that nursing home. I was stealing morphine and Demerol and cocaine and Valium, and I get my damn hands on. And if you think I'm proud of that, you are sadly mistaken. And the day came to me, the people that ran that place came up to me, and they said, Karen, what is wrong with you? You're a good nurse, you take good care of the patients, but you're just strange. And I remember thinking to myself, you'd be strange too if you had 200 milligrams of Demerol on board. You'd be strange too. And I threw my narcotic keys at them, and I walked out the door before they fired me. And I went to work at Bryan Memorial Hospital there in Lincoln. And you guys, it's a fine, fine facility. And I was drunk on that interview, and I got that nursing position. And I'm not talking about falling down drunk. I was just maintaining a certain level in my bloodstream that I would not shake and have those violent tremors. That is clearly desperation drinking. Our book describes it vividly. And I was in hot water up to my yin-yang, let me tell you. I had to drink, I had to take drugs, and I had no more choice than any of it. And I will tell you guys right up front here tonight that the fun was all with me. It was something I had to do. And when that happens, it's a whole different ball game, I got to tell you. And I kept that job for a short amount of time, doing the same things I was doing at that nursing home, stealing drugs, justifying in my head, I don't mean to do this. I'm not a bad person. This is a temporary thing. This is the last time I'm ever going to do it. And we all know that never happens for us. We just jump from the fat to the fire here. And the day came to me when I got caught red-handed stealing some morphine from that hospital. And this has got to be without a doubt the most humiliating day of my entire life. When they said, you give us your narcotic keys and you get out of this hospital and don't you ever walk back in here again. We're reporting this to the State Board of Nursing in Nebraska. That's exactly what they did. That's exactly what they should have done. My other 2 jobs should have done it too, as a matter of fact. And to make a long story short from here tonight, I lost my nursing license. I threw the one thing that I loved more than in the whole world right down the toilet so I could drink. And like I said earlier, that is is total insanity is what it is. And to make a long story short, and short here tonight, I wound up on the streets of Nebraska is what happened to me. And you guys, I spent 2 years on the streets. And I have traveled the Midwest. I prostituted myself. And I'll guarantee you one thing, that I have seen and done things that no woman should ever see her doing. I'm still so sick in the head sometimes I think to myself, excuse me, I wouldn't mind seeing some of them again, you know. And my sponsor assures me I'm still a very ill person to be thinking that kind of crap. You know, I've been in nut houses, I've been in detoxes, I've been in jails, I've been in institutions. I cannot think of a thing that didn't happen to me on those streets as a practicing female alcoholic. Things happened to me I would not repeat from your podium tonight, but I'm sure that you have the general idea. And 2 years went by for me. And there I was back there in Lincoln, standing on Skid Row, sucking on a bottle of Mad Dog. And I certainly had better things intended for myself than to be doing that, I got to tell you guys. I will never forget that last day of my drinking as long as I live. And I hope to God it was the last day of my drinking. That's when I felt that incomprehensible demoralization that our book talks about and stuff. And I'd felt it for years, but I had alcohol to kill it. I had no alcohol, just a very little bit of that Mad Dog in that bottle, and I was done drinking, let me tell you. And I had no intention on quitting drinking. It just happened that way. And I remember looking at this Hilton hotel that was adjacent to that Skid Row area, and I remember thinking to myself, 2 years ago I used to stand on top of the Hilton hotel and drink martinis with surgeons. What am I doing standing on Skid Row drinking with these people? And I rather imagine they felt the same way when they arrived there. And like I said, I can't tell you much about it all. I woke up in an intensive care ward of the very hospital that I was born at, the very hospital that I worked at for 19 years, and I will tell you guys clearly that the alcoholic hell for me started the day I got sober. You know, I'm not a very big person. I only weighed 95 pounds the day I got sober, and I was coming off a quart of whatever a day and 200 milligrams of Valium a day. And that is a lot of booze, that is a lot of pills, and I had a lot of dying to do. You know, they say that most alcohol withdrawal is over within 3 days, and perhaps it is for some people. It certainly was not for me. It was going to be a long, long time before I was going to start feeling better. And I laid in that intensive care ward, and I shook, and I shook, and I died for 30 solid days. I had tubes coming out of my belly. They were draining fluid off my liver. I had IVs going, and I just wanted to die is what I wanted to do. And obviously, I couldn't even do that right. And I used to scream at those nurses and say, you get me some Librium, you get me some Valium, you get me something. This is absolutely inhumane that anybody should have to go this kind of withdrawal. And they said, Karen, listen to us. You need to fill every one of those trimmers and maybe you'll never do it again. I went to a fine, fine facility, you guys. There was no talk about Prozac in that place, I got to tell you, let me tell you. And they said, you need to fill every one of those trimmers and maybe you'll never do it again. And I did not want to hear that, let me tell you. But let me tell you what these people did for me. And I will be forever grateful as long as I am sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. They got about 10 people from AA to come and sit with me. It was your original 12-step call, let me tell you. Thank God for the old-timers in AA that make their babies go through the hospitals with people, I got to tell you. And I fell in love with those people, and I'll tell you why. There was nobody in my life the day I got sober. My family wanted nothing to do with me. They've been through it too many times, and we're going to go through it one more time. My mom, who I love very, very much, you guys, had to be hospitalized because of me and put on tranquilizers. My mom did not deserve that by a long shot, and I have not forgotten it as I stand here tonight. And although my mom is no longer alive, I constantly have to make amends to that woman. And I think I can do that by being a good member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And these people sat with me around the clock for 30 solid days, and they'd say things like, Karen, just keep breathing. That's all you got to do is breathe. And I'd say, when is this withdrawal going to stop? And they'd say, when it's time, that's when it's going to stop. And that wasn't good enough for me. I wanted a date is what I wanted. And they couldn't give me a date, and they were absolutely accurate about that. When it's time, it's time. And at 30 days of sobriety, I walked into the official treatment program at that hospital. I'm a product of a treatment center. I have no opinion on one way or the other, but all they talked about was AA in there, I got to tell you. And thank God, because there's a lot of bad ones out there, you guys, I got to tell you. And they talked about Alcoholics Anonymous, the book, God, love, and service, and that's all that they talked about. And I walked into group therapy for the first time. And let me tell you what I was like when I was 30 days sober. I needed you so desperately on day one, but 30 days there was a whole different ball game when you started telling me what to do. And I walked into that group, and there was 14 men in that group. They were all younger than I was, and they're for drunk driving charges and stuff like that. And this one guy looked at me, and he said, you think you're better than everybody else here, don't you? And I made a comment to this man that I was to pay for a long, long time in that treatment center. I said, yeah, you asshole, and you can put your name at the top of the list. And as a direct result of that comment, I found myself in an inpatient 30-day program for 7 months, you guys. And that is a long time to be in an inpatient 30-day program. And I completed that program, and I went to an outpatient program, and I went to an evening care program. I went to an aftercare program. And I found myself a very, very active member of Alcoholics Anonymous in Lincoln. And I wasn't doing one thing the way you teach people in AA to do it. I would tell the new people, you don't need to read the book and you don't need to sponsor. We can do what the hell we want to do around here. This is an individual program. And needless to say, I was not real popular with the old-timers in Lincoln, Nebraska. You guys, the old-timers in AA are so precious to me as I stand here tonight. But not in 1982. I could have cared less one way what they thought. You know, and you can pull your crap around here just for so long, and these old-timers are going to start nailing you one right after the other. God loved the mean old-timers in AA, I got to tell you. And this old guy with 29 years of sobriety grabbed me out of an AA meeting one day, and he said, you stay away from the new people. How dare you tell the new people in AA they don't read the book and they don't need a sponsor? He said, you're like a typhoid Mary in AA. Everybody dies around you, but you're able to stay sober somehow. And he said, he said, you stay away from the new people. He said, there's going to be a man from California speaking in Kearney, Nebraska this weekend. His name is Clancy. You're going to hear this man speak. You're going to ask this man if he will sponsor you. He is a master at dealing with jerks like you. And I'd heard all about Clancy, and I wanted nothing to do with him, period, because I knew I was going to be in bad, bad trouble. And I got to tell you guys that my fears have been justified 8,000 times over. And I told this old-timer, I said, who the hell do you think you are that you're going to tell me who's going to be my sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous? He said, if you don't get in that car and go with us Saturday, I'm going to tell everybody in Lincoln how you stole money from an AA meeting. And I'll guarantee I was on my way to Kearney, Nebraska. And I paid that money back, too, by the way. And I got to tell you guys that from a podium in Kearney, Nebraska, that Clancy literally, and I mean literally, put the magic of Alcoholics Anonymous into my life. And my life has never been the same since that talk, and there's a reason for that. For the first time in my sobriety, I was identifying with another alcoholic. And as I understand Alcoholics Anonymous, that's what this thing is all about. I know of no finer speaker in the world than my sponsor. I'm not saying that you need to believe that. It's only important that I believe that. And by the end of that talk, that I wanted that man for my sponsor. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how God works in Karen's life. I never would have asked that man in a million years to sponsor me. Trust me, I would not have asked him. And I found myself walking across that convention floor and asking him to be my sponsor. And he looked at me and he said, I don't sponsor crazy people like you. And that's a lie anyway. He sponsors people crazier than I ever thought of being. Keith Carpenter, where'd he go? There you are. And I was standing in my little white dress, my little white gloves on, acting like an angel. And he saw right through my crap, I got to tell you. And thank God he saw through it. And he said, Karen, I don't like to sponsor people on a long-distance basis, but I'm going to do this for you. Because if I don't do it for you, you're probably going to go die somewhere. But he said, I'm going to tell you something, little girl, and you better listen to me real good, because I'm going to say it one time and one time only. You're going to call me every day, and I tell you not to call me every day. If you think it costs too much money to call from Lincoln to L.A., you better get 2 jobs, because that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to sponsor people. You're become an active, viable member of Alcoholics Anonymous. You're not going to argue with me. You're not going to defend your actions to me. You're going to do what I ask you to do. And if you want to do that, then get yourself a different sponsor. And you guys, you want to talk about we stood at the turning point. Yeah. This is the day when my recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous really did begin. And I said 2 words that I almost fell over when I said them. I said, yes, sir. And I'll guarantee you that I say it today, too. Respect's got to start for me somewhere. You might as well start with my sponsor in this program. I went back to Lincoln. I became very, very active in AA in the right way. I wound up by sponsoring 56 women in that town. I'm not bragging about that. It's not that much fun to sponsor 56 crazy women in Alcoholics Anonymous. But I grew to love those women very, very much. And I'll tell you why. They literally showed me the first 4 years of my sobriety what to do and what not to do in this program. And every one of those women are still sober today. It's not because of me. It's because they're active, viable members of Alcoholics Anonymous. And one of the first directions my sponsor gave me, I want you to get that nursing license back. And I tried to tell this man, I cannot go with that kind of humiliation. And he said, Karen, are you arguing with me? And I said, no. He said, get up to the State Board of Nursing Nebraska. Tell those people that you have been sober in Alcoholics Anonymous for 1.5 years. You'd like the opportunity to get your nursing license back. And you guys, I knew it wasn't going to work, but I did it anyway. And that's without a doubt the most important thing I can say in this room tonight. I did what my sponsor asked me to do, whether I thought it would work or not. And I went up and asked them for my license back. And they looked at me like I had just grown horns on the top of my head, I got to tell you. And they said, how many links are you willing to go to? And I had to do a lot, you guys. I had to take crap off people for 2 years that I wouldn't hire to mow my own lawn, if you want to know the truth. And I had to keep my mouth shut in the process. And one of the happiest days of my life occurred about 9.5 years ago, when one more time I was searching in front of the State Board of Nursing in Nebraska. And what they told me brought me to my knees for the first time in Alcoholics Anonymous. They said, welcome home. You're fully reinstated as a registered nurse. And I thank you for that as I stand here tonight. I thank you for that. And you know, that is a gift from AA, you guys. I do not deserve that, but I intend to take it, I can tell you. And I came out here to visit a couple times. I fell in love with Southern California AA. If you're new in this room tonight, tonight. You are in the mecca of Alcoholics Anonymous in the whole world. I want you to know that because I get the honor of doing a lot of speaking all over you guys, and this is the best place to be and be sober. And I envy you if you're new in this room tonight and brand new in Alcoholics Anonymous. Grab yourself a sponsor and get busy and do what we do. Trust me, your whole life is going to change like mine has and stuff. And I told my sponsor on the phone one day, I want to move to Southern California. I want to live on that crazy Venice Beach with all those crazy people. I knew I'd feel like a glove, and I've not been wrong about that either. I want to belong to the Pacific Group. I want to work at UCLA in the operating room. I want to be on 2 of their transplant teams, their heart and liver transplant teams. I wanted this and I wanted that. And every single one of those things have come true for me. And those are all gifts from AA. I do not deserve any of it, but I intend to take it, I can tell you that. And I thank you so much for all that, I can tell you guys. Without you, it would not have been possible in my life. I have had nothing but tremendous support from everybody I know in AA, getting that license back and all that kind of stuff. And you know, I got to tell you guys a couple quick stories. They're stories I love to share with members of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, you know, early on my sponsor asked me, he said, Karen, where are you at with your spiritual program? And I said, Clancy, I don't believe in God. I can't do that stuff. He said, did I ask you to believe in God? All I said was, where are you at with your spiritual program? And I said, I don't have a spiritual program. And I can't do that stuff, and I'm not going to do it. And this is when I lived, you know, long distance away from Clancy. And he opened the book and he read to me from the big book where it says, I get a daily reprieve contingent on a spiritual maintenance with a power greater than myself. And he went on to tell me there's going to come a day in your sobriety when I can't help you, AA can't help you, and you had better well have a God in your life. You're going to be dead from the disease of alcoholism. And I believe that as I stand here tonight, you guys, because it's happened to me many, many times in my sobriety. And one more time I said to my sponsor, what do you want me to do? He said, I want you to get on your knees in the morning and get on your knees at night, and I want you to pray for God's will. Do not pray for things, pray for God's will and the power to carry that out. And I started doing that, you guys, and I didn't feel any connection with God. I felt like a fool doing it, if you want to know the truth. And I talked to him every day on the phone, and I'd say, this is not working for me. And he'd say, Karen, are you staying sober one day at a time in Alcoholics Anonymous? And I said, well, you know that I am. He said, that's the point of the whole thing. Are you stupid or what? I wasn't playing with a full deck when I arrived here. It took me a long, long time to get these little simple things. And in 1985, I found myself in Montreal, Canada, at the World Conference of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you guys haven't experienced a world conference, you're going to see it all over again in the year 2000 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's something that none of us should ever miss. I know a lot of us were in San Diego, but some of us were not. And I want to tell about this, what happened to me that night in that football stadium. And we'd driven from Nebraska, a couple people that I sponsored. And I knew my sponsor was going to be speaking there. And I was going to go to that world conference. If I had to walk, I was going to go and stuff. And we only had $200 a piece. We had no place to stay. The hotels were like $100 a night, and we really couldn't afford to go. And these girls told me, they said, we don't want to go to this. And I said, well, you're going anyway, because I can't afford to go by myself. And then we got up there, and we found an apartment to rent for the whole week for $100. I could not believe our good luck. And I found myself in a great big football stadium at that Friday night meeting. And there was 56,000 sober alcoholics in that football stadium. And I was in awe of Alcoholics Anonymous, you guys, in absolute awe of this program. And they were down there in the football field, and they were practicing for a flag ceremony. And I know this all sounds real corny to the new people, but the longer I stay sober, the cornier I get for some reason. And my sponsor was down there helping them practice for that flag ceremony. And I ran down to tell Clancy hi. He introduced me to people from all over the world now, Alcoholics Anonymous. And you guys, I'm from Nebraska, and I was impressed, let me tell you. And I'm impressed today when I meet people all over the world in AA. And I ran back up and joined my friends. And I will never forget this. As long as I live, I'll never forget this. When the United States of America's flag touched the turf of that stadium, I saw 56,000 sober people go absolutely crazy, sitting around, and all the new people and all the people in between. And they all seem to be loving this program so very, very much. And I remember thinking to myself, what is wrong with me? Why can't I feel what these people are feeling? I, too, wanted to love Alcoholics Anonymous, you guys, and I could not seem to achieve it somehow. And for the first time in my life, I got tears in my eyes. I did not try and stop. And for the first time, with any amount of sincerity whatsoever, any amount of sincerity, I said, God, thank you for getting me here. Please help me to stay here. Please help me love this program as much as these people do. And there it was, you guys, the connection I needed to stay sober. And I have talked to that God every day sincerely since, because I believe what my sponsor taught me. I get a daily reprieve, and that's all that I get. And I will tell you guys that for one solid second, my world stopped. And I will tell you that I remember that woman who was standing on Skid Row in Lincoln, who literally could not quit drinking, who literally could not. And there she was, 3.5 years sober. I personally believe that Alcoholics Anonymous is divinely inspired. inspired. How could anybody hang around here and not believe that after a while and stuff? And I'm so grateful that that's happened for me, because I believe what he's taught me. I get a reprieve. You guys, I work in surgery at UCLA. I have a magnificent job, but it's just a damn job is all it is. My sponsor has taught me that God and AA have got to be center core of my very existence. Not some man, not some job, nothing. It's God and AA. Everything else revolves around that. And I believe that as I stand here tonight. And about 7.5 years ago, we had a tremendous nursing crisis here in Southern California. And we were working our butts off, let me tell you. And I was always the first one to complain about it, I'm sorry to say. And this one particular week, we worked 72 hours. And you know, we're like we're too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. I was a bitch is what I was. And I worked the night shift over there. And this one particular night I want to tell you about, I had the night off. And I went to a meeting early in the evening. I went home and I went to bed early. I was just exhausted. And the phone rang about 2 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, it was my boss. And my boss is from West Germany. And my boss makes Clancy look like a pussycat, I got to tell you guys. And this woman's probably the finest nurse I've ever before in my life. And one of these days when I grow up, I want to be just like her and stuff. And she said, I got 18 people sick over here tonight. I know you're off. I know you're not on call. I need you to come to work. You guys, my sponsor has taught me to do what's in front of me and not debate it. And that was clearly in front of me. He said, well, you do what God gives you to do and quit debating it and stuff. And I said, well, what does that mean? He said, go to work when they ask you to go to work. You know, just suit up and show up for life and stuff like that. And I wanted to call my sponsor, but I don't want to talk to Clancy about nothing at 2 o'clock in the morning, I got to tell you. And I know what he told me anyway, go to work. And nobody ever died from lack of sleep, Karen. And then I get to say, yeah, well, there's a first time for everything, Clancy, you know. But anyway, I went to work and stuff, and I'm so glad that I did it, because the most precious thing happened to me over there. And we were going to do a liver transplant, a little girl that was about 3 years old. And I sent my orderly upstairs to get our little girl and bring her down to surgery. And we had a jet coming in from the East Coast. We had the liver for that child. We had some time to kill and stuff. And he brought this little girl down to surgery. And he said, Karen, you're not going to believe all the people that were with this family. And I thought, well, that's nice that they had the support and stuff. And I was so crabby, you guys, so crabby. And I went out front to get my little patient. And the first thing I noticed was the mother. She had the most beautiful blue eyes I've ever seen before in my life. And the dad was good looking and stuff. And there was about 75 people with this family. And I thought, how highly unusual at 4 o'clock in the morning, how highly unusual any time, if you want to know the truth. And they were being of tremendous support to this family. And I was drawn to these people, you guys, just drawn to these people. I didn't know why then, but I know why now and stuff. And I looked down at my little patient. And I got to tell you guys that Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me to love at a level I never, ever, ever dreamt possible for myself. And I looked in the most beautiful blue eyes I've ever seen before in my life. And this little girl was so sick she couldn't even lift her head off the pillow. She was so sick, dying from some strange liver thing. And I remember thinking to myself, and you didn't want to be here, Karen, you didn't want to be here, you selfish person. How dare you do something like that, you know? And this little girl looked at me, and I said, oh, you brought your little bear down to surgery. And she put her little bear in her arms, and she had a blanket around that bear. And she was holding on to him for dear life, I got to tell you. And she tried to tell me her little bear was going to have a liver transplant. And I said, oh, you're both going to have one. And she said, no, just the bear, you know. We sent the family out the waiting room, and that mom and dad were in absolute hysterics, I got to tell you guys. And this was their only little girl and stuff. And this little girl looked at me, and she said, why is my mommy crying? Go tell my mommy not to cry. I can't stand it when my mommy cries. And because of Alcoholics Anonymous and what I've learned in this program, I was able to tell that little girl the truth. And I said, your mommy's crying because your mommy loves you so very, very much. And she looked at me, and that seemed to settle her down a little bit, you guys. And we took that little girl in the back, and we put that little baby girl to sleep. And we have an anesthesiologist at UCLA that loves to play with the little kids, and he's a great guy, and he's a super anesthesiologist, and he started an IV on the little girl, and he started the bear an IV too, and his IV said bear juice. It was on his IV. And we put that little girl's bear by her little head the entire time of her surgery, you guys, in a little plastic bag and stuff. And we put that child to sleep. And that 16-hour liver transplant did not go well, I got to tell you guys. We almost lost that baby a couple times due to blood loss and stuff. I have never seen a team of people work together like we worked together that night for that child. And 16 hours later, she went up to her room with really not much hope at all, I got to tell you guys. And I became obsessed with this little girl, and I had to see her again. And we have a rule at UCLA. You do not get involved with these transplant patients. They want to know where the organs come from. We cannot tell them. It's best not to see them after surgery. And I don't need to tell anybody in this room tonight that I'm real good at breaking rules now, aren't I? And when she was 6 days post-op from that transplant, I went up to that little girl's room. And you guys, I just thought to myself, I'm just going to go see how she's doing, and I'm not going to talk to anybody. And I opened the door to that baby girl's room. And you guys, I could not believe what was in front of my face. My God, the power of God. The power of God. Here was this little baby girl. It was the first time she'd been up since her surgery. She was jumping up and down her crib. She had her diapers hanging around her knees. She had a baby bottle in one hand. She had that bear in one arm, and she had put Band-Aids all over this bear. He had Band-Aids on his eyes, his ears, his nose, and I mean everywhere. And I just stood in the hall, and I just cried, you guys. I just cried. And something caught my eye out of the corner of my eye. And I'll be damned if our book, Alcoholics Anonymous, was sitting on that kid's dresser. That whole room full of people were in there. And I didn't care if I got fired. I was in that room like a flash. And I said to the mother, I said, whose book is that? And she said, well, that's my book. I'm a member of AA, and so's my husband. And her sponsor was there, and his sponsor was there. And those 75 people had driven 500 miles to be with that family, you guys. They were not from the LA area. And I was impressed, let me tell you. And that they show me what this thing is all about. It's about love and service, and that's all that it's about. And I asked the mother, I said, how long have you been sober? And she said, 5 years today. And I thought, oh my God, her little girl up for the first time. What a fabulous birthday present and stuff. And I walked up with this little child, and she stopped dead in her tracks, and she looked at me, and she said, go away. I'm not sick anymore. And I thought, oh, damn. I had my scrub clothes on, and it scared the hell out of her is what it did. If I'd known I was going in the room, I certainly would have changed clothes and stuff. And she handed me her little bear, you guys, and she said, you take him home and take care of him. He's so sick he needs a nurse to take care of him. And I know why she gave me the bear. She wanted me to get the hell away from her is why she did it. But we pretended otherwise. And I told the mother, I said, I can't take that little girl's bear home. My God, that bear went through this kid's liver transplant. You really need to keep it as a memento. And she said, Karen, please take it. She wants you to have it. She's got 50 bears in this room. And she did indeed have 50 bears in that room. And I felt like a fool walking down the hall with that bear, but I'll tell you, that bear is my most prized possession in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I thought to myself, I need to reciprocate here. I obviously was not prepared for a birthday party, and I remembered something that was in my pocket that Clancy had given me when I was 5 years sober. I was like 7.5 years sober when this happened, you guys. It was a medallion for 5 years of sobriety, and I had hung on it for 2 years too long. And we say in Alcoholics Anonymous, you have got to give it away to keep it. You have got to give it away. The reason I had that medallion in my pocket is because narcotic keys next to that medallion. And I don't need to tell anybody in this room tonight that when I open that cupboard sometimes, my eyes light up like firecrackers. And I can grab on that and I know where the hell I'm coming from here. And I thought, I have finally found the person to give my 5-year medallion to. And I gave it to that woman. And I told her the history of that medallion. She says, oh, Karen, I can't take that. My God, Clancy gave you that. And I said, no, I want you to have it. And I really meant that, you guys. I really did. That's what you've done for me. And the nurses got wind of all this. We got a cake for the mother. We celebrated her 5 years of sobriety. And I got to tell you guys that I could have missed that all. I could have missed the whole damn thing left up to my own devices and stuff. And I will never forget those people as long as I live. There's been no more contact with them. It's got to be that way for many, many reasons. But I know that little girl is doing very, very well and stuff. And, you know, people say to me all the time, why do you keep doing it, Karen? Why do you keep doing it? And I know of no greater thing to say to them, so that this to the end, that my great blessings may never spoil me, that I may forever live in thankful contemplation of Him who presides over us all. And there's more reasons than that for me. You're the ones that walked with me when nobody else would walk with me. You held my hand when nobody else would hold my hand. And you told me that you loved me. And I need you as desperately as I needed you in 1982. You've taught me how to live. You've taught me how to love. You've taught me how to keep my pants up and all those things. And I don't do any of those things very well. But I'll tell you the one thing that I do with 200% absolute perfection, and that is this, that I love you more than in the whole world. And it's truly a story from an alcoholic hell I cannot even describe. I have truly been given, just like the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says, I have truly been given the keys to the kingdom. And I'm going to say one more thing, and I'm going to sit down here. It has been one hell of a walk from Skid Row in Nebraska to where I stand tonight in Bakersfield, California, and I think that but for the grace of God and Alcoholics Anonymous, that I would have missed it all. Thank you for having me, and thank you for my life.
All right.